Hey everybody, glad to be with you all tonight. We do have a lot to talk about tonight. Oh my goodness, we've got a lot to talk about tonight, so let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Hey everybody, I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. Yet another late night conversation. Lately, I have been asking people to tweet this out, right? Not sure if it makes a difference or not, but lately we've been trying it, and it seems like we get a slight increase in viewership if people tweet this out. So take the URL on YouTube, tweet this out. Take the Rumble rant URL, tweet this out. It makes a difference. Put it on your Facebook, put a link on your Facebook. Let's see, right? Let's see what happens. I feel like what we're going to talk about tonight, the theme of tonight's broadcast, is going to be of interest to a lot of people. Again, should be on the front page of every newspaper, just like a lot of things that we talk about on these streams, but there we go. Now, we're going to do it the same way we always do, which is that I give my opening remarks. Then after that, we do a roll call to find out who's watching. Then after that, I answer your super chat questions for the remainder of the night. So if there's something that you would like me to talk about in the second half of our show, if you're on YouTube, send me a YouTube super chat. If you are on Rumble, send me a Rumble rant. If you're on Facebook, you can't really send me any questions, so go to YouTube or go to Rumble and send it that way. Answering y'all's questions is what makes the second half of the show fun. And when we started earlier, I can do it longer. And lately, you all have been asking really, really good questions. Saturday night, you guys asked me a lot of good questions. I gave a lot of good answers. So keep it going, right? People know how to get me talking. Very, very good. So please ask questions. Now, just want you all to know that as of now, my situation is okay. You all know who I am. If you don't, do some investigation. But with everything that's going on in the world, I could, things could go in an interesting direction for me. As of now, they haven't, right? I know, they could come arrest me at any time. I can't stop them if that's what they want to do. My job situation also could get weird pretty soon. I don't know what's going on with that, but I am going to live my life, and I am just going to do the best I can to promote anti-imperialism. And if I get arrested, or if if I'm unable to have a paycheck anymore, I will deal with that when it happens. And I know that you all will be here for me because we are here. We have a deeper bond, and we are a community. We stick up for each other. So I am not worried about things I can't control, and I'm going to focus on doing the best job I can do for all of you. And as of now, things seem to be just like they always are. I'm here in my lovely Brooklyn apartment. I'm making YouTube videos. I am talking to people about all the exciting activities we do with the Center for Political Innovation. And that's just what I'm going to keep doing for the moment. And if something happens, we'll deal with it when it happens, right? We were just down in Florida to support the Uhuru movement, and we're on Rumble, and we're on YouTube, and we're on Facebook, and my wife is very happy. And just taking life one day at a time, doing the best we can, doing the most good with what we've got, right? That's just how you got to live. So As I said, first opening remarks about this topic that's pretty inflammatory, which they may have removed Max Blumenthal from Twitter for reporting on. Max Blumenthal was reporting on this, and he hasn't been able to log into Twitter. And this topic we're talking about tonight is huge. It is absolutely huge. We'll do our opening remarks. Then from there, we'll do the roll call, where I call you all out. As I see you, we find out who's watching. Always a great crew of folks watching. And then after that, I answer your questions. So send in the questions. Get me talking. That's what I need you to do in order to make this meaningful. So couple announcements before we get started. First things first, every morning on the CPI YouTube channel, we have morning messages. And I try my hardest to make sure that most of these morning messages are not from me. I do a few, right? And I'm happy to do them. But we want to make sure that as many of them as possible are not from me. Because, I stream every night, but we want to hear from you. And part of what our Center for Political Innovation community is about is taking care of each other. Anway made the morning message this morning. Absolutely beautiful. Gabby made the morning message on Sunday. Also absolutely beautiful. We have amazing folks. Nina, she made the morning message the morning before, and we are doing something really, really amazing in CPI. We are enabling each other to have hope and connection in our lives, and it is really, really amazing what we are doing. We are far more than a group of people who agree with each other about politics. We are a spiritual community. We are committed to optimism and hope. We are committed to holding each other up. We are committed to economic growth and development. And part of what we have to do is we have to be there for each other. And we're doing it, right? Anway made a beautiful, beautiful message. Nina made a beautiful message. Gabby made a very, very powerful and beautiful message. And we're doing it. We are there for each other. And we have morning messages every morning on the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel. They premiere every morning at 6 a.m. Eastern time. And they stay up there. And they're excellent messages. So we now have made it easy for you to record your own morning message. It's very, very easy now with this great link that we made. So I ask you, if you're somebody who enjoys what we do here on this YouTube channel, you enjoy what our community is all about, don't only watch the morning messages, but also make your own. Submit a morning message to the CPI YouTube channel. Help other people start their day with revolutionary hope and optimism. Bring some light into this world that is consumed by darkness. The morning messages are a great thing that the Center for Political Innovation does. It's a great way that we are able to be there for each other as a community. So start your day with revolutionary hope and optimism. Morning messages every morning on the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel. Yes, we are our organization. We are the Center for Political Innovation. That is us. Shout out to Peter Coffin. He made this great new logo headline. This is us. This is what we are. We are the Center for Political Innovation, and we are doing something really, really spectacular. We are the cutting edge. We are doing things that it's taken. We are years ahead of everybody. And it's amazing. We have stuck up for the Uhuru movement when they were on trial and they recently beat the charge of being foreign agents. We stood there with them and we've been talking about things. We are years ahead. People are catching up and paying attention to everything we do. We exposed that BreadTube, the BreadTube internet socialists were tied in with American intelligence. We were ahead of that. The book we published on Kamala Harris, 4 years ago, we published a book on Kamala Harris. It was so explosive that Amazon banned it on the day that Kamala Harris got the nomination for president of the United States. For 7 days, Amazon banned it, and we were on Jimmy Dore, and we were on Kim Iverson, and we were on every show talking about Kamala Harris and who she really is, and then they were forced to rescind it. We have done so much. I could list all of our accomplishments. I am so proud of the Center for Political Innovation. We have an amazing community of people that is very, very, very dedicated to what we are doing. And of course, with the Center for Political Innovation, a lot is happening. The next big thing that we are doing, at this point, we have made a decision that on the 12th of October, which is not that far away, we are having a one-day workshop in Chicago. I will be there. Peter Coffin will be there. Other CPI organizers and activists will be there. It is a one-day workshop that we're doing. It won't be in Chicago proper. It'll be in like a suburb of Chicago where we're going to have an Airbnb house that we do it at. And the theme will be working families first, build the economy, not the empire. October 12th, all-day workshop in the Chicago area. Now, this is obviously not the flyer we're going to use. This is just something I drew up really quick after we made the decision. We're going to have a formal flyer, a very professional flyer very soon. We're going to have a registration form very soon that you'll be able to fill out with all the important details and all of that, right? But because people's time is limited and people have to make arrangements, I know somebody's already booking a flight and I'm figuring out my travel and everything. If you are wanting to come to the workshop, first step, I would encourage you to right now email me. And as soon as we have the registration form available, I'll register. We're going to have a great workshop in the Chicago area. If we get more than 40 people registered, that's fine. We may have to, pick a different venue based on that. But as of now, we aim to get about 20 to 40 people there for an all-day intensive. The basics of anti-imperialism, some singing, some good food. It'll be catered, group activities. It's going to be great. It is going to be absolutely great. So if you can join us in the Chicago area, send me an email. We'll have formal registration soon. It's going to be a great event. Working families first, build the economy, not the empire. All-day workshop on October 12th, which is a Saturday in the Chicago area. I hope to see all of you there. It's going to be a great event. So we got that in the works. Now, it looks like we're going to be having an event in New York City the same week. A couple days after that, I'll be flying back to New York, and we'll be having an event themed around peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. Details about that event coming soon. I'm very excited. A church that I work with is, wanting to put on an event. I did an event with them out in Los Angeles. And they're great folks, very dedicated to peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. We had an amazing event out in Los Angeles. Looks like we're going to have one in New York City, pretty soon, in a couple weeks. Very exciting, right? Finish what Trump started, get those peace talks on the Korean Peninsula going again. That's related to what we're talking about tonight. Oh boy, yes, the theme of tonight's broadcast very much fits in with everything I just said there. But yes, folks, a lot is happening. Another quick reminder. I'm not sure if I will be able to be there or not. I don't know what's happening because of the UN General Assembly and my job and everything. But on September 28th in Washington, D.C., there's going to be Rage Against the War Machine, an anti-war rally featuring Tulsi Gabbard, featuring Garland Nixon, featuring all kinds of great people. We are official sponsors of that rally. Yes, we are. The Center for Political Innovation is an official sponsor. We are listed on the website. We got our little bug there. It says pro-humanity, pro-growth, right over here. We are officially going to be, sponsors of the rally. Not sure if I will be there or not because of my job, because of the United Nations General Assembly or whatever, but we're sponsors of it. And we're trying to figure out how to get at least some people there because we paid a significant amount of money to be official sponsors because we know how important the Rage Against the War Machine Coalition is, the Libertarian Party, the People's Party, Angela McCurdle, my good friend. We support this event 100%. We're about to put a statement on our website about how much we support the Rage Against the War Machine. Such an important development. So that's coming up. And if you are anti-war minded and you're, able to get to DC, I would encourage you to go. And I will do my best to be there. But my job situation, which is right now very crazy with everything that's been going on, I don't know if I'll be able to be there or not. If I'm not there, I know I'll be there in spirit. And we CPI, we will have, helped make it happen. We'll have paid for it. I hope that folks will go there. Those are the announcements that we've got. Wow. What we are doing as CPI is amazing. This isn't even all the announcements. I have one more announcement. My goodness, we do so much as an organization. I have one more important announcement I have to make, and then we can get to our broadcast, right? People are going to be like, Caleb, when are you going to do the broadcast? I mean, I'm telling you, that this is what it's like being in a group that does so much to promote anti-imperialism. But anyway, let me get to the next point that I have to share with you all, right? Which is, I'm just trying to pull up the image. Hold on. I can just pull up the image for the next one. But I told you all that the big convention that we're doing as CPI is happening next summer. Next summer in the Chicago area, we intend to have the biggest event that CPI has ever had. We intend to have a huge convention in the Chicago area. Every CPI event, we've had conventions before. There's usually 100 to 200 people there, and that's great. We appreciate, having all those people there, and that's always good. But we are thinking we need to aim higher. We need to learn to do real outreach. We need to learn to recruit people. And so we decided, that we are going to do a much bigger convention, a much bigger convention. We're going to do a much bigger convention next summer. And we're going to give ourselves plenty of time to build it, plenty of time to build. And July 12th, 2025, on July 12th, 2025, we are going to be having the National Convention of the Center for Political Innovation. And that will be held in the Chicago area. And we are going to get 400 people there at minimum. We're going to fill up that auditorium. We are going to have an event that is going to blow the roof off, as Peter put it. We are going to have a blow the roof off mega event in the Chicago area. And we're going to do that. And that is going to be our way of building anti-imperialism and hope and optimism among the American people. July 12th, 2025. Now, right now as CPI, we're not collecting dues from anybody because we're informally existing. We liquidated our nonprofit. So at the moment, we're not getting dues from anybody. We're having our Saturday meetings for all the members, and we got 153 people that are members of CPI that are participating in some way, that are on our email internal lists and everything. But what we're asking is, because of the fact that we can't collect dues, we are asking people to donate to the conference fund, the convention fund. Donate to help us put on our convention with the convention. We have a special convention fund that has been set up by Peter Kay. And we ask you, since you can't pay dues in CPI right now, since it's informal, we ask you to, donate, set up a regular pledge, give us $5 a month, give us $5 a week, give us $10 a year, set up what you can do. It can be small, doesn't have to be huge, but having that huge convention next summer is not going to be cheap. And so this is one way you can help out, because at this moment, there's no way to pay dues because we don't formally exist. So donate to the convention fund. That's what we would request that you do at the moment, because we don't have any way of collecting dues. So yeah, that's our quick organizational update for the Center for Political Innovation. A lot going on. So now we will talk about what it is that we came on here to talk about. I'll give my opening remarks. Then after that, we'll do the roll call. And then after that, I'll answer your questions for the rest of the night. So we'll just jump right into it. If you have anything you want me to talk about in the second half, like Sandra, send a super chat, and I will do my best to answer it in the second half of the program. The second half of the show is all you guys. It's me answering your questions. So All right, folks, let's jump into the second half of the program. The second half of our program, we're going to have to talk about this. Holy moly. Holy moly. If you don't know who this is, you should. This is Ryan Roth. And Ryan Roth tried to kill Donald Trump yesterday, allegedly. He's been arrested for the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Shots were fired. The Secret Service shot back at him. He's been arrested. He tried to kill the former president of the United States. He's a terrorist, an attempted presidential assassin, a wannabe Lee Harvey Oswald. But as you'll notice, not only is he an alleged attempted assassin, he's been arrested, you'll notice that he is also a UKRAINIAC. And I am coining that term, by the way. Start using it. We need to make that a common term. He is a UKRAINIAC. And what do I mean by a UKRAINIAC? He is a Ukraine maniac. This guy, not only did he support Ukraine against Russia, this guy went to Ukraine as an American to fight against Russia. This guy became a recruiter for Ukraine's International Legion. He was in Ukraine trying to recruit people from Afghanistan to go to Ukraine to fight against Russia. This guy is a UKRAINIAC. He is a deranged, fanatical, dedicated supporter of the Ukraine cause, the Ukrainian ultranationalists. But more than that, it appears he's got very, very deep connections to the intelligence apparatus of Ukraine. And I'm just showing you what is very, very odd is immediately after he was arrested for trying to kill former President Trump, they wiped everything. They took his Facebook down. They took his Twitter down. They took his book off of Amazon.com. But this guy was such a UKRAINIAC. He wrote a huge book about Ukraine and published it on Amazon. This guy went and volunteered to fight, became a recruiter for Ukraine's foreign legions. And I'm just going to show you what we've got, right? Because we've got this guy's history. We've got it. Oh, we've got it. This is one of his tweets that they've taken down. From September 29th, 2023, Afghan soldiers. The U.S. Embassy in Ukraine is working very hard to finance this project and has asked the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense for a detailed plan on how the money will be spent. Vladimir and Ministry of Defense are working enthusiastically until he provides the information. He was working for the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine. That's the U.S. government. That's the U.S. State Department to recruit Afghans to go to Ukraine and fight against Russia. Now, obviously, this guy is psychologically unwell. He has been arrested for possessing a weapon of mass destruction. He possessed an illegal assault weapon. He had a standoff with law enforcement, a long standoff with the police. He's got a criminal record. The guy the guy is unhinged. All right, there's no question about it. Sane people don't just go and try to kill former presidents. That's not the issue. The issue is that this mentally unstable person was apparently very deeply involved with the Ukrainian deep state and with, it looks like, with the American deep state. It looks like this guy was working very closely with the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine on projects to recruit Afghans to go to Ukraine to fight Russia. It appears that he was flying to Ukraine. He was going around raising money for Ukraine. It appears this guy isn't just some random weirdo. He's not just a maniac. He's a UKRAINIAC. And this should be on the front page of every newspaper. This should be on the front page of every TV network should be running this. This is huge because we all know that Donald Trump has faced not just one, but two attempted assassinations now. One got very close, got him in the ear. This one apparently got close as well. But in this case, we know a lot about the guy who did it. He had a huge electronic footprint. I can see you, Ryan. Huge electronic footprint. He was a UKRAINIAC if there ever was one. This guy was a Ukraine nut. And what just happened in the last debate? What happened in the last debate, folks? What was the big moment in the last debate? Right? So, what are the chances? What are the chances that just a few days, just less than a week after the debate, a UKRAINIAC tries to kill Donald Trump? We all know what happened at the debate. Let's watch it again.
I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of...
So Donald Trump was asked on national television, do you want Ukraine to win? And he didn't fall for it. And he didn't fluster. And he said, I want the killing to stop. I'm not committed to the Ukrainian cause, basically. He said, I want the war to end. I'm not waving Ukraine flags. I'm not signed up with your crusade against Russia. I want the killing to stop. This never would have happened if I was president. And then, less than a week later, who should try to kill him but this guy? A guy who just happens to have been in Ukraine as a recruiter for the Ukrainian Foreign Legion. A guy who is working with the U.S. Embassy. According to his own tweets, he was working with the U.S. Embassy to recruit people to fight in Ukraine. And it just so happens that this guy attempts to kill Donald Trump. Now, if you can't see what's going on here, I'm very disappointed in you. I really am. Because it's very, very obvious that the American people don't want to continue spending billions and billions of dollars on this conflict. And it is very obvious that the majority of the people in the FBI and in the CIA and in the Pentagon also don't want to continue spending billions and billions of dollars on this conflict. And it's also obvious that Donald Trump, the front runner in the presidential race, who's going to win the upcoming election, Donald Trump is so confident to get up there and say, I'll end this war and we shouldn't be spending all this money. And he has no qualms about not saying he doesn't want, he won't even fall for their trap and say, oh, I want Ukraine to win just to appease them. No, Donald Trump 100% feels confident to get up there on the stage and say, I don't want Ukraine to win. And it looks to me like the Ukraine lobby and the people within the American government and the people in Ukraine that are desperate to keep this hustle going, desperate to keep this scam going, desperate to keep, pilfering off billions of our tax dollars, desperate to keep isolating Russia for geopolitical reasons. They're panicking at this point. Donald Trump's going to win the election. The American people don't buy their bullshit. And at this point, it's over. This is an act of desperation. The fact that the UKRAINIAC, this UKRAINIAC guy, went as far as trying to kill the president of the United States, that's an act of desperation. He tried to kill a former U.S. president. That's not what people do if they're expecting to win. That's not what people do if they have public opinion on their side. This is an act of desperation. They didn't get Trump in Pennsylvania. They didn't get him in Florida. And he's going to win at the polls. And it's going to be so overwhelming they won't be able to fake it. They won't be able to rig the election because so many people are going to vote for Donald Trump this fall. The Victoria Nuland crowd has lost. And they're getting desperate. Now, I've got to show you some other things because, free speech in the United States, in theory at least, is pretty broad, right? You generally, especially since the Brandenburg versus Ohio ruling, you generally have a pretty wide swath, right? As long as you don't call for a specific act of violence, you're okay. But there are certain things you cannot do in America, or else you will get a visit from the Secret Service. You will get arrested. One of those things is you cannot call for the assassination of a president of the United States. If you call for the assassination of a president, that's a crime. They'll throw you in jail just for calling for it, just for suggesting it, just for joking about it. They will call them if a mentally ill person says something in a mental hospital. There's special FBI agents who just go from mental hospital to mental hospital. And they have to interview every person who possibly would say something like this, right? That it is one of the red lines in the United States. You absolutely cannot advocate killing a president or former president. It's just, you can't do it. You cannot joke about it. You cannot reference it. It's not allowed. But apparently, I'm horrified at this. I can't believe this. For some reason, illegal activity. There's a giant, I don't know what you want to call it. They're suddenly not enforcing this, and they're suddenly fudging this, and they're suddenly letting things slip through that look blatantly illegal to me. This is an actual headline from Cincinnati.com. Cincinnati.com is the local news of Cincinnati, Ohio, major city in southern Ohio, Cincinnati, right on the border with Kentucky. This is their headline. Trump brings these assassination attempts on himself. Now, people will say, well, this is a letter to the editor, Caleb. The Cincinnati Enquirer didn't say that. Yeah, but whoever wrote the letter to the editor, they didn't write the headline. Editors write the headline. They could have given this letter to the editor any headline they wanted. They gave it that headline. Can you imagine a situation like this, right? Gerald Ford faced 2 different assassination attempts. Did any newspapers run headlines? Oh, Gerald Ford brings the attempted assassination on himself. Nope. How is this legal? How is this legal? But it gets better. What do we think about people who kill presidents of the United States or try? What do we generally think about them? Well, generally, they get prison for life. They get the death penalty, right? It's generally not something that one is considered to be an upstanding citizen for doing. But this is how CNN decided to describe the man who tried to kill former President Donald Trump. I kid you not. This is the headline they ran. This was a video on CNN. Hear more about the idealist who allegedly tried to assassinate Trump. The idealist. Is the idealist? Is that what you call this man? An idealist? I mean, what in the world do they mean he's an idealist? Right? He's not a philosophical materialist. He believes in spiritual forces. He believes in the power of thought. Don't think that's what they mean. That he's just somebody who stood true to his principle. They're talking about someone who tried to kill a former president and current presidential frontrunner. They're talking about him like he's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He's an idealist. He's a man of his principles. What the hell how is this legal? How is this legal? Something is certainly wrong, and the American people can smell it in their bones, and that's why Donald Trump is going to win the election. Donald Trump is going to win, and everybody knows that Donald Trump is going to win, and that's why they're getting desperate. Can you believe that this is they calling an attempted assassin, a wannabe Lee Harvey Oswald, calling him an idealist? I'm telling you, folks, this is getting pretty wild. Donald Trump is going to win. And he's got a lot of people in the military who support him. And he's got a lot of people in the FBI and in the Pentagon who support him. And the regime change war with Russia club is going to lose. They're going to lose, and they are mad about it. They can't stand it. The fact that Donald Trump felt confident enough to say, to not fall for the bait. But I got to tell you more things, right? That let's just talk about this individual, right? You look over his history. First of all, why is he not in prison? Let's just throw that out there, right? Let's look over his record, right? Ryan Roth, you know, why isn't he in prison? Let's look over what he did, right? What did Ryan Roth do throughout his life? Ryan Roth is a convicted felon. He was convicted of having illegal firearms and of obliterating the serial numbers on his firearms. He had illegal guns. He obliterated the numbers, right? So he's a convicted felon, first of all. In addition to that, he's got quite a record that goes on for quite a while. He lived in Hawaii for a while. He just lives in North Carolina for a while. When the police pulled him over in 2002, the police pulled him over. He was pulled over by the cops. And during the traffic stop, he put his hand on a firearm. Now, that gets you killed if you're black. But not only is he not dead, he lived to tell the tale. And then from there, he went and barricaded himself inside of the business that he owned, or inside of a business. So this is a guy who the police pulled him over, and he put his hand on the gun in his car, which, again, if you're black, they pull out their gun and they shoot you. But he then ran away from the police after he did that, barricaded himself inside of a business, and had a standoff with the police. That's pretty intense. That's pretty crazy. He wrote a book. He published a book called Ukraine's Unwinnable War, The Fatal Flaw of Democracy, World Abandonment, and the Global Citizen, Taiwan, Afghanistan, North Korea, and the End of Humanity. He wrote an entire book explaining his worldview about how Ukraine has been abandoned. This guy was very well known to the cops, very well known to the FBI. He apparently went and worked for the Ukrainian Foreign Legion, found his way all the way to Ukraine. They let him in. They generally don't give you visas to other countries if you are a violent criminal. They generally, one of the questions on your form is, have you ever been convicted of a crime? If the answer is yes, they deny you entry into the country, especially if that crime is, illegally owning guns or barricading yourself inside of a building. This guy apparently got into Ukraine, and he worked for the Foreigners Coordination Department. And he was constantly figuring out how to recruit them from different countries. Not surprisingly, he's a big supporter, not just of Ukraine fighting Russia, but he wants to break Taiwan away from China. He considers Taiwan to not be part of China as well. Right? Something's not right here, folks. But I will tell you what I see when I look at this individual, right? What I see is another Lee Harvey Oswald, right? We all know who this man is. This is the man who shot U.S. President John F. Kennedy, Lee Harvey Oswald. All right, Lee Harvey Oswald is the man who shot JFK. Now, many people believe there was a second shooter, and I'm not here to retry that case, right? I'm just here to tell you that this is the man who was arrested for killing U.S. President John F. Kennedy. And if you look at Lee Harvey Oswald's life story, he was a mentally ill young man who didn't fit in with society. And because at the time he lived in the United States and it was, communists were the public enemy number one, as a young man, he got very interested in communism. And then he joined the U.S. military. And one day, he wasn't fitting in too well with the U.S. military. He walked over the border into East Germany. And he lived in Ukraine for a while. When he got to Russia, the Russians said, we don't really want you. You're unstable. So he tried to kill himself, tried to slit his wrists. The Russians found him and they said, okay, my goodness, if you're going to kill yourself. And he lived in Ukraine and he had a wife and he worked in a tractor factory for a couple years. And then that didn't work out too well. So he came back to the United States. And you'd think, if you walk off the job and walk into what was then considered an enemy country, the Soviet Union, there might be some consequences. He didn't face any consequences, which was odd. And he was just an unstable person who was known to U.S. government officials. He was an unstable person who thought he was a communist, who had lived in the Soviet Union, had been in the army, had walked off the job. He was a guy who was not all there. He was a guy who was not all there and had, clearly wasn't all there. I mean, if you look at him in that picture, he's not all there. And he was not all there. And he just happened to be the guy who brought his rifle to work at the book depository and shot at John F. Kennedy. Now, one of the things he said before he died, he said, I'm a patsy. He said, I'm a patsy. Now, what is a patsy? Let's look that up. What is the definition of a patsy? I will put it on the screen for you all. This is important. All right, what is a patsy? There's a lot to learn here. What is a patsy? Let's define patsy. We'll pull up the Google definition of a patsy. What is a patsy? All right, I will send that to myself and I will put it on the screen. I screenshotted the definition of patsy and I will put it on the screen. Hold on, just adjusting the image. What is the definition of a patsy? Patsy is one of those words that they don't teach you in school, but we're going to put up it's an obscure term. It's not a term that people generally use, but what is a patsy? Hold on. What is a patsy? Sounds Irish. Ha ha ha. We'll put it up. Because Lee Harvey Oswald, before he was shot, he actually said, I'm a patsy. So let's get up the dictionary definition of a patsy. What is a patsy? A person who is easily taken advantage of, especially by being cheated or blamed for something. And that's what Lee Harvey Oswald said right after he killed John F. Kennedy. He was arrested and he said, I'm a patsy. And then we all know what happened is that Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald. And it looks to me that Lee Harvey Oswald was somebody who was around. Lee Harvey Oswald was somebody who was not well, somebody who was unstable, that could be at the scene of the crime and could be the fall guy and could be convinced to be part of somebody else's bigger operation. And folks, I look at this guy. I look at this guy and I ask, why is he not in prison? If I did anything close to what this guy did with the police in 2002, I would be in prison. I ask, how did he get to Ukraine? Why did the Ukrainians let him in? Why was he working with the U.S. embassy to recruit people to fight for the Ukrainians? And I see a patsy. I see Lee Harvey Oswald all over this guy. I don't think this guy did it all by himself. I don't think he was just really fired up and supporting Ukraine and mad at Donald Trump and all that. No. This is somebody that has been working with the American deep state. This is an unstable person. Somebody who's not well. Somebody who's not all there. Somebody who's been found by U.S. officials and U.S. deep state people, and somebody who's been found by Ukrainian officials and Ukrainian deep state people. And they've known how they can push his buttons, and they've studied him, and they've known how to get him to do things, and they've known how to manipulate his crazy behavior. And this is somebody who would make a great patsy. And I look at this, I look at this fellow, and he voted for Trump in 2016. I look at this fellow who was in Ukraine, and you can look over the details, folks. The Ukrainians have been bringing in all kinds of nuts. This guy isn't the only one, right? Neo-Nazis in the dozens, in the hundreds in America have been going to Ukraine, right? They have had a special program to recruit neo-Nazis, right? Because the Ukrainians admire Stepan Bandera, who fought against the Soviet Union in World War II, who was a Nazi collaborator. Because of that, the Ukrainians have a special program where they have been bringing in neo-Nazis. And Max Blumenthal and Alex Rubinstein have done great reporting on this issue. They have shown that neo-Nazis in huge numbers have been brought in to fight for Ukraine. That neo-Nazi kind of people with white supremacist, Hitler admiring views have been brought in, and Ukraine goes out of its way to recruit neo-Nazis. Convicted criminals, violent criminals from around the world have been recruited to go and fight for the Ukrainians. And Ukraine has become a collection. If you're nuts, if you're violent, if you've got a criminal record, go to Ukraine. Boy, make Ukraine your new cause. Hate Russia. That's right. That's right. Hate Russia. And you want to be violent and you want to be extreme and you want to prove to the world. And that's the sad thing about this guy, right? As he's grandstanding about Ukraine, I want to say this too, right? A lot of people like this guy's not well psychologically. I mean, look at him. Look at him. Look at what he's written. Look at the incoherent screeds he's published. Look at all. This guy's not well. This guy's not well. But why would he make Ukraine his favorite cause? Why would he make Ukraine his favorite cause? We all know why. Because that's 100% government approved. Right? I mean, it's, trust me, there's nothing that I have hated more than people who repeat the State Department line and think they're being heroic about it. When I was in college, same time the USA was bombing Iraq and occupying Iraq, it was very hard to get people to go to protests. But on my campus, oh boy, they'd have a rally to save Darfur. And all these very conforming, weak people. Oh my God, save Darfur. Oh, yes, I'm just so moved. Oh, I want to help the poor African children of Sudan, blah, 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 blah. So easy to protest against what the government of China was doing for allegedly propping up the government of Sudan. So easy to call for the Pentagon to interfere in an African country, but don't dare protest against what your own government is doing. Oh no, I cannot stand this. The performative heroism. Oh, I'm taking a stand. I'm heroic by repeating exactly what the American government is saying. I hate that. Nothing has driven me crazier than people who, number one, believe and repeat the U.S. foreign policy talking points, but number two, act like they're heroic activists while they do it. It takes zero courage to repeat American government talking points against Russia. It takes zero courage to repeat American government talking points against China. It takes zero courage to repeat American government talking points against Cuba or North Korea or Nicaragua or Iran. It takes zero courage to do that. If you do that and you have the same message as CNN, you have the same message as the professors at your university, the same message as your teachers, the same message as the government, the same message as the president, as the Pentagon, how is what you're doing at all heroic? It's not. And it is infuriating to me when I see people who want to be special. They want to be heroes, but they just don't have the courage to question anything. They just don't have the courage to endure any real persecution. They want to be heroes, but they don't want to be questioning. They don't want to take a stand. They don't want to have any courage. They don't want to do any investigation, but they think somehow the way to be a hero is to follow the bandwagon. That's what they think. Oh, everybody's hating Russia this week, so I'll become the loudest anti-Russian guy, and then they'll put a medal on me, and oh, they're hating Iran this week. Well, I'll become the biggest anti-Iran guy, and then they'll pin a medal on me. Oh, they're hating Sudan this week. I'll become the biggest Save Darfur guy, and then they'll put a medal on me. Oh, they're hating China this week. I'll become the biggest anti-China guy ever, and they'll put a medal on. Oh, if I just repeat what the leaders of the government say loud enough, they'll like me. Oh, it's so pathetic. No courage. No ability to question what the government is saying. This desperate desire to be liked. This desperate fear of ever questioning anything. And they compare themselves to Dr. Martin Luther King. As if, Dr. Martin Luther King was getting locked up and thrown in jail. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was hunted by the FBI and blackmailed. His sex life was put all over the internet. Well, there was no internet back then, but put all over the press. Dr. Martin Luther King was eventually killed, right? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was called a Soviet agent, called a communist, right? But they compare themselves. Yes, I'm repeating the same thing that CNN says, but I'm a martyr. I'm a hero, just like Dr. Martin Luther King. No, you're not. No, you're not. And I cannot stand people who do that. It is annoying already to see people just repeat American government talking points, but to feign this like heroism about it. Oh, yes, I'm a hero. I'm such a hero. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. You are absolutely not. There is no courage in repeating American government talking points against some country. None whatsoever. And the people who do it, like this guy, it was done out of desperation. This is what it looks like to me. It was done out of desperation. This guy is crazy. This guy's got illegal weapons convictions. This guy is, psychologically unstable. And he's thinking, well, this can be my redemption arc. They'll remember me for how well I fought for Ukraine. I'll have fought for Ukraine, and I'll repeat the CNN propaganda, and they'll remember me. And I'll be such a hero. The Ukrainians, they hate Trump, and I'll go try and kill Trump, and then they'll remember me as a great hero. I can be so important. So sad. It's so goddamn sad. What a weak and pathetic person, right? No courage. Somebody should slap this asshole in the face and tell him, hey, you know, all those people you compare yourself to, you think you're Martin Luther King, you think you're George Washington, you think you're Che Guevara, all those people stood up to the rich and powerful. They didn't repeat their talking points. All those people stood against CNN. They didn't go after and target the people that CNN told them to hate. My God, right? This is a weak, cowardly, pathetic, mentally ill person who wanted to be a hero, who wanted to be liked, and didn't have the courage to question anything he was told, didn't have the courage to look into the Ukraine conflict, just wanted to follow the mob, whatever was trendy. Hating Russia was trendy. Hating Donald Trump is trendy. It's infuriating to me. It's absolutely infuriating to me. This clown, Ryan Roth, and I am convinced, I don't know, and I mean, you shouldn't say things you don't know, so I don't know, okay? But I don't think this guy was smart enough to get as close as he did and come as close as he did to doing what he did. And there's other things people are talking about the BlackRock advertisements. People are raising that. Isn't it interesting? Apparently the guy who attempted to kill Donald Trump in Pennsylvania, in Butler, Pennsylvania, he apparently also was in BlackRock advertisements. That's pretty damn weird, isn't it? The same big British bank that is pushing economic degrowth around the world and Malthusian economic policies and seems to be, very anti-Russian, is also the same bank that apparently had these two people in their commercial. What's going on there? I mean, that's weird as hell. This guy was in a BlackRock commercial. So was the other attempted assassin. What's going on there? Something's not right, folks. Something's not right about this whole thing. I'm not saying I know what happened. I know this guy's nuts. I know this guy's a UKRAINIAC. He's a UKRAINIAC, and we should call him that. That needs to be a new word that we use everywhere. We're going to start using that word. Start tweeting that word. Start using it everywhere. This man is a UKRAINIAC. That's what he is. He is a UKRAINIAC. This is our new word. We are going to make this catch on. You don't have to give me credit, right? If people start using this and they don't give me credit, I'll be fine with it, right? I'm not going to lose my shit. We should make this the new word that we use for these kinds of people, right? Anytime we hear one of these people start going, oh, Russia's so bad, we should go, UKRAINIAC. And we should immediately get the image of this douchebag in our minds, right? Immediately. Next time you hear somebody start going on, oh, Russia's so awful, and Trump works for Putin and all that, say, UKRAINIAC. That's what you should say. That's what you should say, right? We need this to become a new thing. We need this to become a new thing that people are always talking about. UKRAINIACs. UKRAINIACs. And we just need to make it a sign that someone's not stable, that someone's potentially dangerous, that someone's, anytime someone starts talking against Russia and, oh my God, Trump works for Russia and Putin, blah, 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 blah. You just need to say, UKRAINIAC, UKRAINIAC, because that's what it is. This guy was a Ukraine maniac. He was a violent, unstable person who got into altercations with law enforcement and didn't die. And then from there, despite having a huge criminal record, went to Ukraine, worked with the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, wrote a crazy nut job book comparing Ukraine to Taiwan and all kinds of things, and somehow got back to the United States, got his hands on firearms, and got close to killing a former president of the United States. This is a UKRAINIAC. And I think it's really interesting that he got as close as he did. I think it's really interesting, his connections. I don't know if he acted alone. I have heard, and this is interesting, that apparently the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, is not turning him over to federal officials. Now, that's very interesting, isn't it? But apparently, there's some fear that federal officials might not let the whole story get out there. And it appears that federal officials may have there's fear of turning him over to the feds. So the Florida state officials have him in their custody, and the feds want him because he's an attempted assassin on a president, but local officials want to turn him over, and I want the whole story here. I want the whole story. And honestly, you know what? I mean, not that I want to give advice to a piece of shit like this, but just throwing this out here. If this guy really wants to be a hero, all right, again, that seems to be his underlying motivation. He should start talking. That's what he should do. If this guy really wants to be a hero, the only hope this guy has forever being remembered as a good guy in history is he needs to open his mouth. He needs to start talking, right? If anybody knows this guy, well, obviously, anyone can watch YouTube. The only hope this guy has for being a hero in history is to start talking. Tell us who worked with you. Tell us who gave you the gun, even though you're not allowed to buy one because you're a felon. Tell them who advised you and told you where to go and how you knew where Donald Trump would be and how you got close. Tell us everything. Tell us what Ukrainian officials you're in touch with. Tell us what U.S. government officials you're in touch with. Tell us everything. If this guy wants to be remembered as somebody who makes a difference, if he opens his mouth and tells the whole world exactly how he was enabled to get where he did and do what he did, he'll be remembered. He'll be remembered by history for sure. If that's what this guy wants, that's what a lot of people who do crazy, awful crimes like this guy attempted to do, they do. Well, if this guy wants to be remembered by history, he should open his mouth and tell us exactly who gave him the guns. Tell us exactly who gave him the information about where Donald Trump was. Tell us exactly who helped him get to Ukraine. Tell us exactly who brought him back from Ukraine. Tell us everything. Tell the whole world exactly how you got where you got. All right? And if the whole truth comes out, this guy will never be forgotten. I'll tell you that much. This guy will never be forgotten. He will never be forgotten if he tells us the whole truth. If we find out who in the government enabled him to get where he was, if we find that out, we'll be in good shape. We'll be in good shape. We will be in good shape. And that is what the whole world needs to know. That's what the whole world needs to know. The whole world needs to know. The whole world needs to know who enabled this guy, who helped him do what he did. Who is it who was trying to prevent Donald Trump from taking office again? Who is it? Who did this? Who did this? Who did this? Who did it? Who did it? What went on here? What went on here? What went on here? What happened? How did this happen? How did this happen? And that's what we have to say. And I want to end on this point, because as much as I am very angry with this man, I'm not just angry with him for how he tried to kill Donald Trump. I mean, I'm obviously very, very angry about that. And I'm angry with him for thinking he's a hero for repeating CNN propaganda. I'm angry with him for going to Ukraine and trying to recruit Afghans and all that he did. I'm really, really angry at this fellow. I am. But I just want to end. Look, I'm a Christian. as a Christian, we're supposed to forgive. We're supposed to not seek vengeance. We're supposed to love our enemies. And that's what it means to be a Christian, right? You're supposed to love your enemies. You're supposed to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You're supposed to forgive. And I guess what I see in this man, I don't know that much about him. What I see in this man is a very, very amplified and deadly and horrific aspect of what I see in a lot of people nowadays. So many people don't think that they are good enough. So many people have gotten the message from society that they don't matter. So many people have been left behind. They don't have a good job. They don't have a family that loves them. They don't have friends. So many people have been given a message by this society, you're not good enough. And they go to the movies, they turn on Netflix, and they find out, in order to matter, you have to be a superhero. In order to matter, you have to be Batman. In order to matter, you have to be a rock and roll star. In order to matter, you have to be a celebrity. And so many people go through life being told that they don't matter. And they have this desperation. How can I be somebody who matters? How can I be somebody who matters? And I see that in this man. Sounds like this man, with all his problems, with all the maniacally evil within him, he was desperate to be somebody who mattered. And he saw the Ukraine thing as an opportunity to be somebody who mattered. He saw killing a president potentially as to be somebody a way to matter. That makes me cry. It makes me sad. It breaks my heart. So many people just don't understand that, if you're a father and you care for your children and you love them, you matter. If you are somebody who volunteers and helps other people in your community, you matter. If you are somebody who promotes truth in a world of lies, you matter. If you are somebody who loves somebody and cares for somebody, you matter. And you can matter and you can be a hero just by being there for other people. You can be a hero just by standing up for what you know is right. You can be a hero just by caring for your loved ones, just by building a relationship, just by building an organization, just by having compassion for other people. You can be a hero. You can be a hero. And when I was in Russia at the World Youth Festival, one of the big themes that they emphasized is that during World War II, all kinds of ordinary people in Russia became heroes. They became heroes by defending their communities. When the Nazis invaded and killed 27 million people, there were grandmas on the rooftops with sniper rifles. There were little kids making booby traps. That whole country turned into heroes. And ordinary people who just lived their lives, took care of their kids, worked a job. When the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union, they became heroes. And in Donbass right now, I've met heroes in Donbass. I met a university student, guy from Lugansk. I took a picture with him. A university student, but instead of going to the university, he's fighting to defend his community. He's taken up a gun to protect the people of his community from the Nazi regime that's been imposed by the United States. He's from Lugansk, and I have to show this picture. I have to show this picture because they have banned it. They have actually banned it from Wikipedia. Wikipedia doesn't want you to see this picture, and that's why I want you to see this picture. I want you to know why this war in Ukraine is really happening. This war in Ukraine is happening because in 2018, the United States this war in Ukraine is happening because in 2014, the United States violently overthrew the Ukrainian government. George Soros and Hillary Clinton violently overthrew the Ukrainian government, and Hunter Biden and all of them, they violently overthrew the Ukrainian government in 2014. And then the people in Lugansk and Donetsk, they declared independence so they could keep speaking their own language, so they could keep their World War II memorials up. They declared independence. And ever since then, the government, backed by the United States, has been bombing them. For 8 years straight, the people of Donetsk, the people of Lugansk have been bombed. And this is a monument that exists in Kiev to all the children who have died since the U.S.-backed regime in Kiev has been bombing people, has been bombing, and they banned this from Wikipedia. They don't want you to know this monument exists, but the U.S.-backed regime in Kiev has been killing children nonstop. This is the web archive. Shout out to Rachel. This is the web archive of the Wikipedia page for this monument that they took down. They banned this. This monument is the Wikipedia page for this monument. They banned it. And for 8 years straight, they've been bombing the people of the eastern regions, bombing the people of Donetsk and Lugansk for 8 years straight. They signed a peace treaty, the Minsk Agreement, and they never implemented it. For 8 years straight, they've been bombing these people. And so finally, Russia recognized their declaration of independence and sent troops in to protect them. And if you really want to know some heroes, you go and talk to the people of Donetsk. You go and talk to the people of Lugansk. You go and talk to the people in Crimea. Those are the heroes, right? And just because they're not all over CNN, just because these children and their lives aren't celebrated or mourned in American media doesn't mean they're not real. Those people are heroes. Those are people who sacrifice. Those are people who've been put through hell for 8 years just because they're proud of defeating the Nazis, just because they speak the Russian language in their households. Those are the heroes. The people of Donetsk, the people of Lugansk, the people of Crimea, the people of Odessa, the people who got burned alive in the House of Trade Unions in Odessa. Those are the heroes right now. Those are the people that are standing up for their communities, standing up for their country, standing up for their way of life, standing up for their religion. Their religion has been outlawed by the Ukrainian government. It is illegal to practice the Orthodox Church. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church has been outlawed in Ukraine, for God's sake. Their freedom of religion, their freedom to speak their language, everything has been taken from them. And they do not surrender. They faced a food blockade. They faced a drone. Their children have been killed. And these people have not surrendered. And this jackass Ryan Roth, if jackass Ryan Roth knew anything about how the world really was, and he wanted to be a hero, he would stand up for these people. He would stand up for these people, and he wouldn't let CNN get away with the lie that somehow Ukraine is just, the innocent country that's being attacked by Vladimir Putin. Oh my God. No, he would stand up for these voices that never get heard, that never get promoted, never get celebrated in American media. The forgotten children, the 16,000 people that were killed over the past 8 years in Donbass. All right, if you want to talk about heroism, you stand up for these people. You tell their story. You tell their story. You call out the anti-Russian propaganda. You point out that the Ukrainian government is full of Nazi admirers, people who burn World War II memorials, people who honor Nazi collaborators like Stepan Bandera. That's the story that needs to be told. That's the story that needs to be told. Tell people about the Alley of Angels, the monument that got banned from Wikipedia because they don't want you to know about it. Tell them that the government that billions and billions of our taxpayer dollars has gone to back up, that government is a murderous regime that has killed thousands of people. You tell them that. You tell them that. You want to be a hero, you tell them that. You stick up for these children. You talk about how these lives matter. That's the way you can be a hero. That's the way that you could be a hero. Folks, I try to be optimistic, and I'm going to be optimistic because we're winning. We're winning. We've already won. The world is shifting in a multipolar direction. And this imperialism that the U.S. economy is based on, this imperialist system, is dying. And there's a new world coming into existence. There's a new economy emerging in the world today. The East is rising, and the imperialist phallocracy, the British Empire system, is dying. And communism has changed. The way the Soviet Union was, the Soviet Union's never coming back. And communism has changed, and socialism has changed, and a lot of things have changed. A lot of things have changed. A lot of things have changed. And what I'm here to tell you is that there's a whole new economy rising in the East. And that the British Empire system that views human beings as kind of financial calculations, that thinks there's just too many people in the world and we need to reduce consumption, that keeps countries in poverty, that system is on its way out. And a new world where the banks and the factories and the industries are forced to work in the interest of all of society is rising. And it's not the Cold War anymore. It's not the same old Soviet-style communism. Things have changed. A lot of things have changed. And that's our whole new worldview that we're not even calling communism at this point. We're calling it innovationism. Because to call yourself a communist now means something very different. It means that you're a, pink-haired 13-year-old who thinks all Republicans are Nazis. That's not us. To call yourself a communist now means you're a Democrat. We're certainly not Democrats, right? And that we have to change the way we present ourselves. We're innovationists. We believe in the God-given creative power of human beings to constantly reinvent their relationship with Mother Nature. Look, I have frequently quoted, many times on these streams, I have quoted what Frederick Engels said makes human beings unique. Man, right? Human beings, right? They are the only species that interacts with their environment and forces the environment to serve them. And that we're constantly reinventing our relationship with Mother Nature. That ants have been building their ant farms the same way for thousands of years. Bees have been making their beaver dams the same way for thousands of years. But in just a few thousand years, human beings have gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to space travel and iPhones. We human beings have done amazing things. We are constantly reinventing our relationship with nature to serve us in a more efficient way, to expand our population, to expand our life expectancy, to make our lives more comfortable. We have a God-like creative power. God is the creator, and we have creativity. We have the ability to innovate in ways that no other species does. We have a piece of God within us. We have a God-like creative power. And our creativity is constantly expanding beyond the narrow limits of the old system. Hunter-gatherer civilization didn't work because we got too good at hunting and gathering. We got way too good at hunting and gathering. And there was a scarcity of animals to hunt. And there was a scarcity of fruits and nuts to gather. So we invented agriculture. We had a whole new social system. Feudalism became outmoded because we got too good at it. We started, developing shipping routes, the Silk Road from China, the printing press came to Europe. We got too good at feudalism. And so feudalism became outmoded and we had to have capitalism. And now capitalism has become outmoded. We've gotten too good at production. We've got 3D printers. We've got artificial intelligence. We're about to have self-driving cars. And our economic system can't fit in the narrow restrictions. Look, there is no scarcity nowadays. There's no shortage of housing in America. I keep hearing about this housing shortage. There's no housing shortage. There's plenty of housing in America, but people can't afford to buy it. People are homeless because there are too many houses. People are hungry because there is too much food. Our government spends thousands and millions of dollars buying cheese just to bury it. So the cost of dairy stays high enough that the farms don't all collapse. That's not rational. Self-driving cars are on the brink of coming. And self-driving cars should be a great thing. It should be great to have self-driving cars. That human chore called driving shouldn't be necessary any longer. But because of this irrational system, self-driving cars would mean millions of unemployed truck drivers, millions of unemployed Uber drivers. This is not rational. We need order, because out of chaos cometh order. We need to bring order to the world. We need to replace lightning and static electricity with an outlet that you can plug into. We need to rationally organize the means of production. The banks and the factories and the industries and the centers of economic power should be rationally organized so that we can maximize human potential and that growth can continue. We need a government that is popular and draws its strength from the organized people. We need a government that will control the means of production, the banks, factories, and industries, and organize them in order to make sure we have long-term economic growth. We, on our website, the Center for Political Innovation, on our website, if you go to our website, cpiusa.org, we have a 4-point economic plan to rescue the country. A 4-point economic plan. And that 4-point economic plan that we have developed, 4 points, a mass program to rebuild the country, public control of our natural resources, public control of our banking system so that the lending of money is done in the public interest, public control of our natural resources, public control of banking, and then an economic bill of rights to ensure that everyone has what they need. That would rescue the country. Our 4-point plan would rescue the country. Go to our website, cpiusa.org. We have a 4-point plan that would rescue the country. But that 4-point plan cuts into the power of Jeff Bezos, cuts into the power of ExxonMobil and BP and Shell and Chevron. It cuts into the power of the big monopolies. We need a government of action that fights for working families. That's what we need. We need a government of action that fights for working families. We need a government that views every human being as an investment. I think that everyone should be able to have health care. I think that everyone should be able to get education. But I'm a little bit different than Bernie Sanders because I don't view it as a handout. Bernie Sanders views it as a handout. I want everyone to get free health care, and they should get it as a handout, as something for free. We give free things to corporations all the time. They don't pay any taxes, so we should give free things to other people also. That is what I believe. I am Bernie Sanders. Give free stuff to people just like we give free stuff to corporations. That's not what I believe. I believe in the same policy. I think we should have free healthcare. I think we should have free education. But I don't view it as a handout. I view it as an investment. Because I believe But if we want to have a strong country, we're going to need the people in that country to be as healthy as they possibly can be so that they can go out and create and innovate and work hard and make a strong, prosperous country. And I think if we're going to have a strong country, we need to have an educated population, people who know everything. We need to have tons of engineers, tons of scientists, tons of doctors, tons of nurses. We need to have educated people so that they can go out and build things and invent things and do great things so that we can have a strong country. I think we shouldn't have unemployment in this country. Not because I just want everyone to get a paycheck, but because it's a huge waste. Human labor power, the source of all wealth. There's all this human labor power that isn't being utilized. I think we should utilize everyone's human labor. And I view an economic bill of rights. That's what Roosevelt proposed. Remember, our greatest president, in my opinion, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. In his presidency, he proposed an economic bill of rights. And I believe in an economic bill of rights for every American. All right? That's what I believe. But I don't view an economic bill of rights as a handout, as something we give to just be nice to people. I view it as investment in the nation. We need to get back to the idea that people have an obligation to each other. All right, this is 1944, right? You say, well, that's communist. Is Roosevelt a communist? He wasn't a communist. But Roosevelt was a great president. And he proposed an economic bill of rights, the right to a job, the right to an adequate wage and decent living, the right to medical care, the right to a decent home, the right to economic protection during sickness, old age, and unemployment, and the right to a good education. I believe in this. And I believe in it because I believe it would make America stronger. If we utilized the labor power of every person, we provided everyone with good medical care that emphasized prevention, right? We provided everyone medical care that emphasized prevention. We provided everyone with a good education, and we started churning out great engineers, great scientists, great innovators, great, computer technicians, great smart people doing great things. I think this would be a great thing for our country, but we have to view it that way. We have to understand that we're not in this alone. The radical individualism of our society has gotten out of control. You are not alone. You are a product of everyone in your life, your teachers, your parents, your family, the people in your community, the people you see every day. You are the product of everyone around you. And you do not exist in a vacuum. You need other people. They've done experiments, and babies, when they lock them in a room and they don't see anybody, they die. You need other people. You define yourself in relation to other people. You are not an isolated individual. You are not an atomized individual. You live in a society. Margaret Thatcher said, there's no such thing as society, only individuals. Well, that's bull honky. There is a such thing as society, and you live in it. And we have got to learn to live for the sake of others. We have got to learn to care for each other. We have got to learn that we're all in this together. And right now, our country is going down the tubes. It's going down the tubes because it's run by a group of international bankers and billionaire monopolists who don't care about us. They only care about their international system. They only care about more wars to protect their international system. They only care about staying at the top of the pyramid, screw everybody else. Well, I am here to tell you the only future that we can have as a country is if we reject the rule of the international bankers. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. What we need is a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. What we need is a government of action to fight for working families. Folks, that's what I've got to say to you all tonight. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who's with us? Names and locations. Who's with us? Names and locations. Jenny at Cincinnati. Quanos, Houston, Texas. Chase, shout out to Chase. Always good to hear from Chase. Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. Chris Cox in UK. Bob in Troy, New York. Courtney in Northern Virginia. Scott in Maryland. Oregon. Crow. Carolina in Berlin. Ryan in Kansas City. Steve in Boston. Sandra in Pennsylvania. The seasoned noob in China. MT in Los Angeles. Ellie in Chicago. Welcome, Ellie. San Diego, checking in. Seneca, South Carolina. Diana in Florida. Danny in Colorado. Buck in Arlington. St. David's, Bermuda. Mariah in North Carolina. So good to have you. April and Chris in Salt Lake City. So good to have you. Anthony in Texas. Colin in Greensboro. Welcome. Waka. Denver, Colorado, and San Francisco Bay Area. Welcome, Ann. Anthony in Detroit. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Toronto, Canada. Gregory Duffel. Welcome, Gregory. Dan does great morning messages, by the way. I've got a couple morning messages from Dan to play, but send more morning messages, but Dan does great ones. Dan is a rock musician, by the way, and he does great stuff. Mr. Wonderful Z. Welcome, Z, Mr. Wonderful. Good to have you with us, Mr. Wonderful. Names and locations. Anybody else? This is the roll call that we do on every stream. It is so good to know that you all are here. You all are an essential part of this, you know. If I just wanted to say some shit, I would film myself and post it afterwards. You all being here, you all asking questions, you all engaging, we are doing something special here. Folks, the morning messages. Oh, we got Jean out in Singapore. Welcome, Jean. Folks, the morning messages that we do on this channel are really, really, really important. The morning messages are a really, really important part of the CPI experience. And every morning, we do morning messages on the CPI YouTube channel, every single morning. And I guess I'll put it on the screen again, right, that we are having a workshop. So this is the big announcement, the big reveal from tonight, is that we are having a workshop hold on, just pulling it up. We're having a workshop in the Chicago area. We don't have the formal leaflet, the professional leaflet yet. We just decided the date and time and all the details. October 12th, which is a Saturday, all day in Chicago, working families first. Build the economy, not the empire. October 12th, all-day workshop, Chicago area. Right now, if you want to come, just send me an email. We're going to have a registration form soon so people can register. Right now, everything's in flux. We're also going to have, you know, a formal leaflet at some point. But right now, we just finalized that we're going to do this. October 12th, all-day workshop in the Chicago area. Be there. It's going to be great. We would love to have you there. And it's going to be awesome. And, it's not public. You have to register, and we have to make sure we have to vet you first. Security, is a concern. But it's going to be an all-day workshop. We got an Airbnb. It'll be in a suburb of Chicago. It's not going to be in downtown Chicago. It'll be in Chicagoland. It'll be in the Chicago area, but we're getting a special place for it, and it'll be all day. It's going to start at 9:30 in the morning. It's going to go until late at night, and we are going to get to know you. Peter Coffin's going to be there to do his stand-up comedy. We're going to have a musician. We're going to have good food. It'll be catered with good food. You will love it. This is our next big event. And so if you are able to get to the Chicago area, to be there for our all-day workshop that we're doing on October 12th, please email me, and pretty soon we'll have a registration form and you can register and we'll go from there. But right now, this is what we got. This is what we got right now. So we got the name, we got the date. Very, very exciting. I am very, very excited. Anti-imperialism is what I'm all about, folks. You know it. I am all about anti-imperialism. And I am not in this because I want to win the internet. I enjoy all of you watching me right now. But at the same time, I'm in this to build a community. I'm built in this to be there for other people, to help other people. This movement saved my life. And that is the truth. This movement saved my life. I would not be as good at talking as I am now if it wasn't for this movement that saved my life. I would not have ever gotten to New York City to have a good paying job to be on international television if it wasn't for this movement that saved my life. I would never have traveled the world, gone to Iran, gone to Russia, gone to Venezuela, gone to Nicaragua if it wasn't for this movement, right? I owe my whole life to this movement. I am proud of all the work that I do with RT, all the work that I do with the Center for Political Innovation, proud to have represented us at the World Youth Festival, proud to have met multiple presidents, right? I met the president of Iran. I interviewed him, Ibrahim Riazi. I interviewed and I sat down with him, proud to have talked to Russian President Putin. And while we're at it, right, why not put that on the screen, right? Since we're talking about, different stuff, why don't we put my interaction with the Russian President Putin on? If you have any more super chats, folks, please send them in. Now is the time. If you have any more super chats, now is the time to send them in, right? And please keep in mind, things are a little weird with my job right now. I don't know what's going to happen, but so, super chats, not only do super chats give me something to talk about in the second half of the show, they also, pay my rent and help me, maintain this expensive New York City apartment. And with everything up in the air, your super chats will be very, very appreciated right now. But yeah, this is my interaction at the World Youth Festival. Back in March, I got the opportunity as an American to speak to the Russian president. So let's put it on, right? This is my chat with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin.
That some people came here knowing not a single word in Russian, and now they know many. One young person from Kamchatka is sitting in back rows. He's probably unaware of what has been talked about. Please introduce yourself.
I'm the leader of the United States delegation. I'm representing the Center for Political Innovation. And I would like to just thank you from the bottom of my heart for that dynamic interview you gave to Tucker Carlson, in which you showed many, many young Americans a different kind of leadership, because our politicians and our leaders in the United States, they speak in sound bites, they speak in terms of scandal and gossip, but you presented a long-term vision, a scientific view of statecraft, and by getting through to young Americans, you made a difference. Many people who would never have listened to anything you had to say or heard another perspective heard you because of that interview. Now, getting to my question, things between our two countries are not good at this point. Before we left, we had to have a press conference at the United Nations. We are concerned about being prosecuted. There are 3 Americans that have already been charged and are facing prosecution, possibly 15 years in prison, simply because they attended a conference like this in Russia, the Uhuru movement, they're called. And we are concerned because I know that I speak for the majority of the American people when I say that we do not want our tax money dumped into this conflict in Ukraine any longer. We do not want our country to continue to deteriorate internally while our leaders waste money on prolonging this war. I'm frightened by what the Biden administration is doing, not just in Ukraine, but also on Taiwan and on the Korean Peninsula. And I really do see gatherings like this as a potential road to peace. And what I have seen at this festival has blown my mind. The amount of young volunteers that you have here, people who have stepped up, who love their country and want to just come forward and put together dynamic events like this. What kind of role can events like this and young diplomacy activities like this play in helping set the stage for maybe changing the dangerous direction our leaders in the United States are taking things against the majority of the wishes of the majority of the people of our country? Thank you.
The United States of America is a huge and unique country. In its own way, over 300 years, in just 300 years, which is a small period of time compared to our history, but thanks to the talents of the Americans, it became a superpower, which is an obvious fact. We know outstanding American politicians, we know outstanding American business people, cultural activists, which is an obvious fact. We used to be allies during 2 world wars as we fought Nazism and fascism. What happened recently? After the war, after the alliance, the United States and the Soviet Union started dividing the world, and they did so successfully. And based on this balance of powers, they created international relations and created the modern system of international law. Then the Soviet Union ceased to exist for a number of reasons. I will not go into detail, but they were mainly internal reasons. There is one superpower remaining, represented by your country. The way your elites use this monopoly to global domination is dubious. In my opinion, the United States failed to bear this burden of responsibility that they happen to bear. They created monopoly, strengthened it. I don't mean the American people, I mean the ruling elites. While strengthening their monopoly, they soon faced a situation where the overwhelming majority of countries disliked it. And so, step by step, it became obvious to everyone that there is resistance to the forming global order. Many, including your allies, they are keeping their silence here. They are afraid of speaking up because they're dependent on major economies, on mass media. There are a lot of dependencies, but believe me, I know what I'm talking about. Even allies dislike it too. And so they faced failures and disturbances. The ruling elites of the United States, after achieving the monopoly of power, decided that the previous system of international relations that was built on the outcomes of World War II is no longer satisfying for them because the balance of power evolved, and hence they decided to change the international legal order. And when it became clear that not everyone is okay with this, by this I mean Iraqi developments, they happened without UN Security Council sanctions. The same applies to Syria, Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia. Without going into detail about root causes, there were no decisions or resolutions of UN Security Council. The United States did let this genie get out of the bottle. If they did so, why can't other countries protect their national interests in the same way? As for Yugoslavia, my counterpart told me on multiple occasions, yes, we did so without UN Security Council resolution, but there was a waging 8-year war, bloodshed, something must be done. When Russia, however, decided to protect their people in the Donbass, which faced a war with elderly, with children being killed, why cannot Russia do the same while protecting their own people, not some thousands of kilometers away from their national borders, instead on the border of their own country, and people were waiting for us to help without going into detail. My point is to understand that the world cannot be controlled from one pole, and which is detrimental to that pole itself, as it undermines the foundation. And in the interview given to your compatriot, Mr. Carlson, I said that dollar is being undermined as they forbid to use dollar for settlements. They seek quick results. Instead of gaining one, they only undermine their national currency. They attain an opposite result, and this is true for many areas. In my opinion, this is a wrong policy. But the youth, returning to your question, can do many things without interfering in domestic processes, without describing or giving descriptions of the behavior of presidential candidates. It is just a part of the national culture, but youth can contribute in building state-to-state relations. What would be the procedure? They can just speak up domestically, within law, within their constitution. It is the only way, the only option. In no way do we call upon any activities of disobedience, but it is a possibility to speak up in their own country. And I think this is a way to go. In my opinion, this is going to pave the way for non-state forms of contact in order to create conditions for improving relations on state-to-state level too. Thank you very much for your question.
And you know what? I've been speaking out long before I ever met Russian President Putin, and I'm going to keep speaking out. And I'm glad that he approves, because he is certainly someone I respect. Anyone who could do for Russia what he did, right? What Russia was like during the aftermath of the fall of the Soviet Union and what he turned it into, that's a man who knows his shit. So he's encouraging me to speak up. I think he knows what he's talking about, and I intend to keep doing just that. Folks, those of us who understand that this Western imperialist system is dying, those of us who understand that we need a new economy, a government of action to fight for working families, we have to stick together, we have to organize. But now I'm going to answer your questions. I have 5 questions that have come in via Super Chat. I don't see any Rumble rants that have come in. If anyone has any more questions, please send them my way, because that's what I'm here to do. Yeah, send questions and I will answer them. Do we have technocracy in the U.S. government? Explain. So, first of all, we have to talk about what technocracy is. Okay, now my understanding of what technocracy is that technocracy was a theory that developed during the Great Depression, that engineers and machinists and technical experts should run the government and run the economy. It was seen as an alternative to communism, but also an alternative to capitalism. And it was called the technocracy movement. And then there was later a book called The Managerial Revolution by James Burnham that argued that a new class that was neither capitalists nor workers, that was, technocrats, bureaucrats, managers, ran society. Now, when I Google the phrase technocracy, the phrase that comes up is the government or control of society or industry by an elite of technical experts. And I would maintain we don't have that, in the sense that we are ruled by profit. Profits are in command in the United States. And technocracy always presented itself as being an alternative to capitalism, right? Technocracy was not socialism. It was not the rule of the working class. But it wasn't the rule of capitalists either. It wasn't profits in command. It was the smart people, the technical experts, the managers, the engineers running society. And my understanding is that that we still have capitalism in the United States, and that the means of production, the centers of economic power, are operated in order to maximize profits for their owners. I live in an apartment building. This apartment building wasn't built because guys like me need a place to live. It was built so landlords and banks could make money off of it. We don't have food in our society so you can eat it. We have food so that, agribusiness can make money producing it. Big box stores can make money selling it. And the reason that we have a problem of people being homeless because there are too many houses, people being hungry because there's too much food, is because profits were in command. And if we had some other system like technocracy, where we had engineers and bureaucrats who were actually in charge, we wouldn't have this problem. The engineers and the bureaucrats would just say, oh, okay, and they would solve it. And we wouldn't be having the crisis that we're having if there was some other group in charge. If profits were not in command of our economy, there wouldn't be a mass problem of overproduction. There wouldn't be all kinds of people homeless while there's empty houses everywhere. I mean, these problems would be very easily solved because the technocrat in charge, the technician, would be able to resolve it. Now, what's interesting, so, in the textbook of CPI, which is widely available, we published a whole new textbook, which is a history of Marxist groups in America, et cetera. We included the history of the Sam Marcy global class war tendency. The book is called Out of the Movement to the Masses. It's a very large book. Some people say, well, it costs too much. Well, you have to realize it's physically huge, and it contains well over 500 pages of material. I'll put it on the screen. Out of the Movement to the Masses, Anti-Imperialist Organizing in America. It's a very large text that we published. It's physically large and it's many pages long, and it's quite a big book. And this book, Out of the Movement to the Masses, in it, one of the chapters, chapter 2, goes over the history of the global class war tendency. And Sam Marcy was a member of the Communist Party. He quit and he joined the Trotskyites and the Socialist Workers' Party, and eventually started his own party called the Workers' World Party. And at the time that he was in the Socialist Workers' Party, there was a big debate over technocracy. So a number of leaders of American Trotskyism in the 1940s, 1939, after the Stalin-Hitler Pact was signed, right? The temporary non-aggression pact between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union was signed. There was a temporary non-aggression pact between the Soviet Union and the Nazis. And so as a result of that, a number of Trotsky's followers broke with Trotsky, because Trotsky said the Soviet Union was a deformed workers' state. And a number of his followers said that, nope, if they signed a pact with Nazi Germany, they must be no good. And one of those people was a guy named James Burnham, right? A conservative named James Burnham. Now, I mean, he wasn't a conservative then, but he became a conservative. He became a neocon, right? But he was originally a Trotskyist, a guy named James Burnham. And James Burnham eventually published a book called The Managerial Revolution, arguing that we lived in technocracy, right? Not in capitalism. This is James Burnham. He wrote a book called The Managerial Revolution, and arguing capitalism had been overturned, and that we lived in technocracy, right? And what's interesting is that Sam Marcy argued with James Burnham, and he argued with him. He said, we don't live in a technocracy because we still have capitalist crises. And he furthermore argued, and this is very interesting, that if we did live in a technocracy, if some other class that wasn't the working class had managed to seize the means of production from the capitalists, that would be a good thing, and we would support it. Right? If another group other than the working class had managed to seize control of the means of production and seized them from the capitalists, and the means of production were no longer being operated in order to maximize the profits of a wealthy few, they were just operated for this other class that wasn't using them to make profits for themselves, that was rather using them for some other reason, that would be great. That would be an advance, right? And then it would not be, it wouldn't be that difficult to eventually have the working class in power, right? And all the problems of capitalist society flow from the fact that the means of production are privately owned. The banks and the factories and the oil wells and the big box stores and all the commanding heights of the economy are privately owned. And they are not operated for the good of society. They are operated to make profits for those who own them. And if some other class had managed to seize the means of production from them and was operating them not to make profits for themselves, and we're not capitalists, that would be great. And it would mean that, we were pretty close to having socialism because, if they were operating them for some other reason than profit, wouldn't be that hard for us to get together and make them operate it for the good of society. And we would almost be in a socialist society if we had technocracy. If we had a technocratic society, we would be very close to having socialism. We don't. We have capitalism. We have a society where the banks, factories, and industries and the centers of economic power, are actually operated for the profits of a wealthy few. We don't have technocracy. And Sam Marcy said, first of all, number one, there is no such thing as technocracy. We live in capitalism. Number two, technocracy, if it could somehow exist, would be a good thing. It would be a step closer. We don't have technocracy. What we do have, rather, is that we have capitalism. But as capitalism enters a long-term crisis, there's a development in capitalism. It's called Bonapartism. It's where one group of capitalists fights with the other capitalists to try and stabilize society. And that the rise of Donald Trump, much like the rise of Roosevelt, the rise of Abraham Lincoln, the rise of Louis Bonaparte, the rise of Hitler, the rise of authoritarian governments in Western capitalist societies, this is the result of an economic crisis. Right. And what I argue in this book, which is about to be published in Chinese, by the way, they're about to publish this book in Chinese. It's going to get very wide distribution in China because people in China have read it and they find it to be the most advanced analysis. I mean, the praise that I have gotten for this book from Chinese scholars, they are blown away by my analysis as an American Marxist. I am so excited to get this book published in Chinese, and they're taking it very seriously. They're like, no, we're not going to do a crappy translation of this into Chinese. We're going to really translate this into Chinese. This book is getting a huge amount of, I am really excited for when the Chinese audiences get their hands on this book because I'm pumped. And the amount of positive feedback I've gotten, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, this book, which is now available as an audiobook, it goes into how Bonapartism, or the centralization of power in the hands of one group of capitalists, is part of the natural breakdown of capitalist society during an economic crisis, right? It's the natural results of an economic crisis, but it doesn't contain a solution because it's still, the crisis is not resolved, right? And that one particular form of fascism one particular form of Bonapartism is called fascism. And fascism is degrowth. It is driving down the population, driving down productivity, trying to roll backwards the wheels of history in order to stabilize capitalism. And that's what Nazi Germany was. And then I would argue that the Biden-Harris faction are degrowth fascists. And that's what I argue in this book. So check it out. But yeah, that's my answer, Sandra. I hope that is a helpful answer. But my understanding of what technocracy is it's presented as an alternative to capitalism. And we very clearly live in capitalism. Though there are power struggles within the ruling class, though power is centralizing and such, I argue that we still live in the rule of profits. That is my answer. I hope that this is a sufficient answer, Sandra, and that you are satisfied. Thank you. All right. And keep the super chats rolling in. Right. I've still got another hour till midnight here. I can keep going for a while. And at the moment my job is in a weird spot, so I don't anticipate getting up very early tomorrow. So, if you all keep asking me questions, I can keep answering them. So there we go. Next question. It was a Secret Service redemption op, says Chase Fillingham. Now, what is Chase arguing? Is he saying that this is the Secret Service failed in Butler, And so they arranged for this guy to try and kill Trump and fail. Is that what you're arguing? That's quite an allegation. You know, I would, again, I urge you with the conspiracy thing, what I always urge people to be careful of, there's nothing wrong with pointing out inconsistencies in the official story. There's nothing wrong with pointing to suspicious aspects of whatever. But you got to be careful with what you just said there, Chase. You got to be careful because we don't have all the facts yet. And this guy might start talking, or somebody might come forward, or, you know, a lot of weird things have been happening. You know, the fact that Tulsi Gabbard was put on the Quiet Skies list, we know that because members of the Department of Homeland Security leaked it and told us, right? And that things happen, right? And so more information might come out. And if that information doesn't match your theory there, someone can use that to discredit you, right? I'm obviously, I respect you as a friend. We're just talking here as buddies and we're theorizing. And maybe you're right. Maybe that's what happened. But we don't really know, right? And until you got to be careful, because if you start saying what happened without all the facts, without information, or just speculating, right? If more information comes out or whatever, people can use that against you. And so I have a responsibility as somebody who is a journalist, as somebody who goes on television and talks about these things internationally, as somebody who does these YouTube streams, to not say things that I don't know. Somebody once told me, if you don't know something to be true, don't say it. But if you really know that something's true and you in your heart are adamant, you know it for a fact, don't be afraid to scream it from the heavens. That's a rule that I try to live by. If I don't know that something's true, sometimes you get excited, sometimes, but I try not to say anything that I don't know to be true. But if I do know that something's true, scream it from the heavens and say it as loud as you can, because you know you're right, and don't be afraid of the consequences, because the truth will set you free. That is a life. I mean, I don't always live true to that, right? We all waver in our principles, right? And let me just get this out of the way. All right. I just want to throw this out of their way because, you know, the deep state, right? I mean, looks a lot like they've killed people. They smear people. And that, I mean, there's a lot of things that have gone on in the past that they've used against other people that have gotten on the odd side of the deep state. And I have been the victim of that. And I have been subjected to smears that are really disgusting. If you Google search for me, it doesn't look good. And I'm angry about that. And I hope that you all will visit my personal website, calebmaupin.net, you know, because that's my website and all that. But, you know, there's been a lot of nasty smears that have been said about me. But if you really look into it, there's nothing there. And I've debunked all the nasty smears, and I've shown that, you know, what have they really been able to show about me? They've been able to show that I'm a human being. I'm a human being. And that, you know what? The ugly thing that they don't want people to realize is that all of us have got skeletons in their closets. All of us have, right? And you know, I'm very open with what's out there now about me. I don't have shame about that, right? It is what it is, right? I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't do anything that wasn't consensual. I made mistakes, sure. But, you know, and I have been hurt in my life. I have been abused. I have, you know, there's some sad things in my past. And you know what? I bet you have sad things in your past too. And I bet if I looked into your family and your family history, I could, if I dug deep enough, I could find addiction. I could find addiction in your family history. I could find domestic violence in your family history. I could find mental illness in your family history. I could find all kinds of gross things that you don't want on the internet. And you know what? You don't deserve to have what happened to me happen to you. You don't, right? I don't think anyone deserves to have their dirty laundry and their ugly family history and their private details smeared all over the internet. And what the deep state did to me was wrong. But that said, I'm at the point where, you know what? Fine. If that shit is out there about me, right? I didn't do anything wrong. Well, I mean, I did wrong things. I made mistakes, but I didn't do anything illegal. Didn't do anything that wasn't consensual. I exercised poor judgment in a couple situations, did things I regret. But other than that, I'm just guilty of being a normal person. I'm guilty of being a normal person. And I'm not ashamed of being a normal person. I really am not. I am not ashamed of being a normal person. And I am glad, in a way, that you all know what you know about me. And you know that I've been through some stuff, because you have too. You have too. You have too. And I'm a human being just like you. And one of the people that I look up to in some ways is Oliver Cromwell. And Oliver Cromwell, when they were painting a portrait of him, he said, "Paint me warts and all," meaning don't touch up the picture. I want to be who I really am. I am who I really am in front of all of you, right? I'm in front of you, warts and all. And that's how you know that I'm the real deal. There's a lot of fake people on social media. A lot of people that come at you and look perfect and look plastic and look phony. I am not one of those people. I am before you, warts and all, as a genuine human being. And just like there's stuff in your life you don't want all over the internet, there's stuff in my life that I don't want all over the internet either. I'm a real person. I'm a real human being. And we have to learn to be there for each other. And we have to learn to care for one another. And we have to learn to have compassion for each other. And we have to learn that despite our backgrounds and despite what we've been through, and despite the sad things in our past and the sad things that we've experienced, etc., we can move on. We can forgive. We can forgive ourselves. We can forgive other people. We can restore broken relationships. We can have reconciliation. We can learn to work with each other, and we can build and we can construct. That's part of the natural process we're going through. And who knows where all this high-tech stuff is headed? I mean, nobody has any privacy really anymore, right? I mean, Google supposedly keeps track of everything you Google searched. Well, would you like everything you've ever Google searched to be on the internet? I don't think you do. Right? I don't know anyone who would. And we're heading toward a world without privacy. But if we head toward that world without privacy, we're gonna have to start being honest with ourselves. We human beings are flawed, and we've created a very flawed society that leaves a lot of people behind, that leaves a lot of people damaged, that leaves a lot of people with hardships they have to go through. And I have been 100% honest with you all. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this movement. It wasn't for the movement, the anti-imperialist movement that I joined, that taught me to do outreach, that taught me to engage with people, that gave me confidence, right? That helped me understand the world around me. And that's why I am in this to build a movement. That is what I am in this for. I am in this to build a movement. I am building a community of solidarity. That's what I'm in this for. I am not in this for just to be right on the internet, just to build my profile online. I am in this because I believe that this movement is what is necessary. This movement is right, and this movement must be built. So there you go. So bring it on, deep state. You've violated my privacy, and you've shown the world that I am a human being, and I am proud to be a human being. And there you go. All right, next question. Also from Chase Fillingham. First attempt on Trump reminded me of the Reagan attempt. Because he was hit but didn't die, right? So, John Hinckley shot Ronald Reagan but didn't kill him. Is that what you mean? Look, the Ronald Reagan, I got so angry. John Oliver said, "Oh, there's loads of conspiracy theories about JFK. There's no conspiracy theories about the attack on Ronald Reagan. There's loads of conspiracy theories about that." Have you looked into the attempt on Ronald Reagan's life? Have you looked into the details? Have you looked into it? Have you actually looked into what happened with Ronald Reagan? Right? So the guy who shot Ronald Reagan, John Hinckley, didn't kill him. It was right after Ronald Reagan took office. He was speaking at the AFL-CIO convention. He got close enough to kill or to shoot Ronald Reagan. The guy was the son of an oil company, an oil family that did business with the Bush family. Right? Bush was vice president, you'll remember. And the guy who shot Reagan, John Hinckley, was the son of a wealthy family that did business with the Bush family. That's a little sketch right there. He was another one of these crazy people. He was like the crazy, mentally ill, schizophrenic son of this wealthy oil family. He was found not guilty. The jury, he had a federal trial, and he was found not guilty for reasons of insanity. And instead of going to prison, he went to a private mental hospital. Now, how do you shoot a president of the United States, a sitting president, and not go to prison for the rest of your life? How is that possible? I guess just being rich, being well-connected. But then he didn't go to a prison. He went to a private mental hospital paid for by his family, which happened to be millionaires. And then if you look at all the restrictions that were imposed on him, he's not allowed to give any interviews, right? And they've now have completely released him. But even now, he's not allowed to give any interviews. And the judge said, okay, he's allowed to have a YouTube channel. And so he has a YouTube channel where he plays his songs that he wrote. Something's really off. Okay, and so for John Oliver to say there's no conspiracy theories about, there's plenty of conspiracy theories there. Again, I'm not saying I know what happened, but I know something ain't right about that story. And the other thing that's weird is just a few months before that, John Lennon was shot and killed outside of his home in New York City. 2 high-profile assassinations. Famous rock star and then an attempt on the president. And at both of the scenes of the crime, they found a copy of Catcher in the Rye. And both of the killers apparently were big fans of the book Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, and were so big into it, they both brought copies of the book with them, if I'm not mistaken, and left them at the scene of the crime. Now, that is weird as hell. That is weird as hell. All right? And you know, why were both of them really into the novel Catcher in the Rye? I mean, you could argue that, okay, well, Catcher, you know, there didn't used to be a lot of literature for mentally ill people, and, you know, mentally ill people, and Catcher in the Rye is about a mentally ill guy who's reacting to the death of his brother, and so he's mentally ill and he's roaming around, and it, you know, was published at a time there wasn't literature like that, and both of these guys were obviously mentally ill, so maybe they identified with Holden Caulfield, the character in Catcher in the Rye, and okay, but it's still a little weird they both brought it to the scene of the crime. Well, maybe the one heard the other one did it, and so he had the idea to do it. Okay, maybe, but this is still getting weird. But then look into the author of Catcher in the Rye. All right, and again, not telling you I know what happened, because I do not know what happened. Go look at the Wikipedia page of the author of Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger. And on his Wikipedia page, you will see that J.D. Salinger was a counterintelligence officer during the Second World War. And afterwards, he was running the counterintelligence corps in the denazification of Germany. And that should ring some alarm bells. Ding, 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 ding. So both of these guys, John Hinckley and Mark Chapman, who both killed famous people, both brought with them their favorite book, which is Catcher in the Rye, and both of them left it on the scene of the crime. And the guy who wrote Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger, just happens to be an intelligence officer. Yeah, that should ring some alarm bells for people. Again, not saying I know what happened. I do not know what happened. Well, that's pretty damn weird. That's pretty damn weird. And I don't have the right to tell you anything I don't know. But I'm telling you that the details of those cases are very, very, very odd, right? Very, very, very odd. And that is all I've got on that. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. All right. People cancel others over minor differences. This is a really big problem. This is a really, really big problem in our culture, right? And you know, it's interesting because I have always believed that loyalty is a winning attribute, right? That you know, you stand by your principles, you stand by your friends, even when things get hard. That's always been my understanding, right? You stand, that you take tough stances, right? And you know, I've always felt that way, right? That the great heroes of history, Jesus Christ was, so strong in his principles that the Romans nailed him to a cross, right? That Joan of Arc was so strong in her principles that she was, martyred and burned at the stake, right? That, that the great heroes of history are people who endure persecution for what they believe is right, and they refuse to back down, and they refuse to sacrifice. That's what I've always believed. But I've been informed that in liberal circles, it's the opposite. In liberal circles, you're very heroic if you cut off somebody, right? If my mother was anti-gay, so I cut her off. My cousin was against abortion, so I cut them off. And you're a hero if you abandon people, right? If you will cut off this very important relationship, you break up with your boyfriend over a political stance. And I got to tell you, that is a really toxic thing, right? I mean, it's very, very toxic to terminate relationships over small differences. And it's not heroic to isolate yourself, right? Loyalty should be loyalty to people, not abstract principles, right? Having principles is important as well, but your principles should inspire you to attach to other people. And if you just cut off people because your principle that you're loyal to, if leads you cut off from those people, how can you use that principle to influence people, right? I'm all about sticking to your principles. I'm all about that. But that doesn't translate to terminating relationships. That's where you lose me, right? I'm with you if so-and-so, if you are adamant that abortion is wrong and you refuse to back down, fine. If you are adamant that abortion should be legal and it isn't wrong and you refuse to back down, I'm all about that, sticking to your principles. What I'm not about is how does that translate to cutting people out of your life over that disagreement? Because if you are adamant that abortion is wrong, shouldn't you stay friends with people who disagree so that you can influence them? Right? I mean, it's like if you're alone and right, you don't change the world. All right? If you want to change the world, you should be friends with as many people as possible and use the principles that you stick to nudge them and influence them to do what you think is right. I mean, that's generally my understanding, right? Is that having principles means you stick to those principles and you want to influence as many people and nudge people and try to change the world in line with your principles. And that if you just cut people off because they disagree with you, you lose the ability to influence them, right? You don't have any ability to influence anyone if you cut them out of your life, right? If you just fuck you, go away. Oh, you disagree with me on something? Well, fuck you, and you go away. Are they ever going to listen to you on anything? No. Are they ever going to care what you say or think? No. And thank you, Mariah, for the super chat. You're on the list. You'll be answered. And any more super chats that come in, I'm here to answer your questions. But that's an important thing. If you cut people out of your life, why should they listen to you? Right? So the idea that it's somehow heroic to cut off somebody because you disagree. No, it's heroic to stick to your principles. It's also heroic to stick by your friends. And that if you really believe in your principles, you should want to influence as many people as possible with those principles. And so that should mean that you don't cut people out of your life because you want to influence them. But the main thing is the people who are in power right now, they want nobody to influence you except this thing. They don't want you to have a family. They don't want you to have friends. They don't want you to have a church. They don't want you to have a political organization. They don't want you to have anything but this. They want you all alone, just like you were during the pandemic, all alone looking into this so they can figure out how to program your brain. That's what they want. And ultimately, right, if you're all alone and you're only looking into this, you're probably going to end up as a pretty depressed person. And that's what they want. That's why they made a TV series called 13 Reasons Why, romanticizing suicide. That's why they're always talking about overpopulation. That's why in Canada, end of life, what is it? The end of life thing is being legalized and promoted in demented advertisements. There's evil satanic things going on. There are evil satanic things going on in the world today. And I'm telling you that for your own preservation, you need to have other people in your life, even if you disagree with those other people, even if you and those other people have hurt each other's feelings, have disrespected each other, you still need to have relationships with other people. And that also having people in your life who you disagree with is good for you, because then you don't live in a bubble. If you have beliefs that you are very strong about, you should be able to defend those beliefs with other people. And you won't be able to effectively defend other people, or you won't be able to effectively argue for those views if you never encounter the other perspective. If you really strongly believe in gay marriage, you should at least know one or two people who are against it so that you understand what the other view is, so you can make stronger arguments in favor of gay marriage, right? I mean, part of being able to have a strong position is knowing what the other position is and being able to respond to it. And being able to relate, more importantly, to understand why people take the other position, what their feeling and motivation is. If you want to really effectively argue in favor of gay marriage, you should know. You shouldn't just know what people who are against gay marriage say. You should know what people who are against gay marriage feel and why it's so important to them and how they feel in their soul in order to craft an effective argument against it. You don't gain anything by isolating yourself. That's, I guess, what I'm getting here. You all alone, cut off from everybody, with only this as your companion, you're really vulnerable then. You're very weak. There's no one to protect you. And this thing has total control over your brain and can lead you in satanic, evil directions. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. And look, I don't know. People say I shouldn't talk this way, but I can only speak to what is true for me. Okay? I can only speak what is true for me. So if this is a way you feel like this is unhealthy talking or whatever, it's true for me. That when I was a communist, we referred to people who left the movement. We referred to such people as living biologically, meaning they were alive in the biological sense, but they were no longer really alive. They were alive biologically, but not spiritually. And I really do believe that, right? That not being part of a movement, not being involved in trying to save the world, but just kind of going along with the motions, just kind of whatever, just living your life and being governed by your phone and governed by your TV and not taking action and not thinking about how you can change the world and not really engaging with how the world works, understanding how the world works, not learning things so you can change things and changing things while you learn things. You're technically alive, right? But you're only alive in the biological sense. And I stand by that. That is true for me. And, for me, I have found the times in my life where I'm not able to be part of a movement. are the times in my life that are the hardest for me because I don't really feel alive, right? There have been times in my life when, because of transitions that have gone on, when I left, when I was basically forced out of the Workers' World Party, when I didn't really have a group to be in. I mean, I had a job to do and I was still being an anti-imperialist on the internet, but I didn't have an organization to be part of. And it was very hard for me. And I think about, how I was when I was a teenager and how, I was kind of lost. And, I'm just telling you, and this is my truth, right? And maybe it sounds, people say I shouldn't talk this way. Well, maybe it's not true for you. I'm not saying it's true for you. I guess there's a lot of people out there who live non-political lives and are very happy about it. So maybe it's not true for you. But in my truth, that is my experience. When people are not involved in the movement, when people are not involved in trying to change the world, when they're just kind of accepting and going along with life, they are living biologically only. They are only living biologically. That is true for me. Right? Maybe it's not true for you. And, and maybe that language offends you or scares you. And I respect your right to be critical of it. But in my sense, when people abandon the movement, when people abandon anti-imperialism and they just go back to living a normal life, I don't think they're happy. I don't think they're happy. And I have seen many people get emotional. There was an older guy I worked with in Cleveland. He was older than me. He wasn't old. I mean, I was in my early 20s. He was in his 40s. And every time I saw him, he was talking about back when he was doing political activism, when he was a communist in his 20s, like me. And things had happened, and he'd gotten married, he'd had a kid, and he'd left the group he was in. And he desperately wanted to join the Workers' World Party because he wanted a taste of that movement. He wanted to live again. He wanted the life that you get from being an organizer. And I mean, it didn't work out. And I was very disappointed with how it was handled because I think he had the right to be part of the group. And I think that, there was, organizational problems. He wasn't able to become part of the group, but he needed it. And that's why every time I saw him, he was bragging to me about things he had done when he was younger, when he was part of the movement. Right. And that there needs to be a place for people. One thing that I will say, right. And this is where it gets complicated. Right. But I feel like there should be a place for people, right? Obviously, if somebody makes themselves a danger to the group, they got to go, right? I mean, that's a given, right? You threaten somebody, you got to get them out of there, right? But there's a lot of people who are very damaged by this society. And while you can't, put them in charge of the group per se, and you can't, but I think people should have a right to be involved to some degree or other, right? And that is one thing I do feel adamant about. I don't want to exclude people because of their limitations, but you have to keep people's limitations. You have to be aware of people's limitations, right? I mean, you can't, you when you become aware of ways people are that could be a problem, you have to deal with it accordingly. But I also believe that you should make room for people. Right, you should make room for people, and that when people are excluded for silly reasons, right? Maybe there can be different tiers where people are involved in different levels, but I don't think we should be excluding people just to exclude them, or and that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, all right. Mainstream media is desperate to tie both assassination attempts to Iran. Israel is desperate for war with Iran. Do you think the Israel lobby is involved? What do I think about that? I really doubt Israel had anything to do with what the UKRAINIAC did. And I really doubt Israel had anything, or I'm sorry, I really doubt Iran had anything to do with what the UKRAINIAC did. And I really doubt that Iran had anything to do with what the other guy did. I think the Iranians know how much of an Israeli shill Kamala Harris is. And, I don't see a connection there. However, let me throw this out there. This must be said, right? Trump did murder Qasem Soleimani. And so you have to understand, Qasem Soleimani was not just a general in Iran. He was the national hero of Iran. He's a celebrity. He's, imagine like the most patriotic hero in the United States combined with, like the biggest celebrity in the country. That's who Qasem Soleimani was. And so the feeling that Iran should take revenge for Qasem Soleimani, that's going to be widespread in Iran. Okay? When Trump killed Qasem Soleimani, that was a cowardly act. It was deeply wrong. And the feeling among Iranians, among everyday Iranians, that there should be vengeance against Trump, that's going to be unavoidable. Now, I obviously think Trump is the better pick in this election. He's the lesser of two evils. And but I mean, there's no denying that among average people in Iran, if you ask them, should vengeance be taken against President Trump for killing Qasem Soleimani, the answer you probably would get from them would be yes. Okay. And I'm not saying that because they're right. They're obviously wrong, right? I think that, obviously left adventurous terrorism of any kind is wrong, but on top of that, I think Trump is the better candidate in this election. But that said, there's probably on an emotional level, many Iranians who feel that Donald Trump killed Qasem Soleimani and want revenge for that. And that's deeply sad, and it's probably unavoidable. I mean, as a result of what Donald Trump did, which is murder Qasem Soleimani in a very cowardly way. That was despicable what Trump did when he murdered Qasem Soleimani. Trump, he was pushed to do it by Mike Pompeo. He was pushed to do it. He was facing an impeachment at the time. It was an awful, awful, reprehensible moment for Donald Trump. And so the fact that there would be hatred for Trump in Iran because of that, I don't think we should be at all surprised by that. But is Iran actively trying to kill Donald Trump? I don't think so. I did ask at the United Nations, the Iranian representative. I said there's been allegations that Trump is trying to kill or that Iran is trying to kill Trump. And I asked him, and we filmed it, his response, and he said no. He said, well, he didn't say no. He said Iran is seeking retribution for the killing of Qasem Soleimani against Trump through legal means. That's what they are. The official policy of Iran is that we do want revenge on Trump through legal means. They want Trump to be tried in international court for what he did. That's their position. So there you go. All righty. There is fierce debate about the existence of NATO's promise not to expand. Where is the truth? I don't think there's fierce debate about it. We have documents now. It was told that NATO would not move 1 inch eastward. We have paper. It was a paper trail of it. And it was said to Russian officials. I mean, there's no debate. Okay. It's out there. They've produced documents. It was said by U.S. secretaries of state and all of that. It was said. Even Biden acknowledged it. There's video of Biden acknowledging that. So there's no debate. Look, the way Western media works is that they just say things that are not true, that are contested, and they act as if there's no other version of events. I've seen this at the UN over and over and over again. Russia comes forward at the UN with true things and facts and details. And the U.S. ambassador says, oh, more conspiracy theories. And it's like they've got proof. They've got all kinds of stuff. And they go, oh, yes, Russia presents more conspiracy theories. Don't believe anything Russia says. It was Russia that said it after all. Russia could say the sky is blue and they would say that. No, I mean, they have proved over and over and over again. NATO was promised to Russia that NATO would not move eastward. And they did. And it's been proven. And that's that. And what Mariah says here is absolutely true. Look, the guy had a shootout with the police. How do you not go to prison for a really long time if you have a shootout with the police? Right? I mean, how was this guy? This guy was obviously a crazy person who was very well known to American intelligence, who went all the way over to Ukraine and apparently is tweeting that he was working with the U.S. State Department to recruit Afghans to fight for Ukraine. I mean, it doesn't get more obvious who this guy is. I think we all know who this fellow is. You know, so I mean, the idea that he's just some random guy. I mean, did he do what he did all by himself? I mean, I doubt it. I don't know what actually happened, though. I hope he talks. I hope he tells the whole story. But I really, really doubt that this guy who had a shootout with the police, right? Again, why is he not in prison? Who went all the way to Ukraine, was working with the U.S. Embassy to recruit Afghans to fight in Ukraine. And then he comes back here and does what he did. And we think that he wasn't being tracked. I mean, something's going on there. Something's going on there, folks. It looks to me like something's going on there. That's what it looks like to me. Right? So, but we don't know. We don't really know for a fact. Sorry if my question was unclear. I want to know why mainstream media is pushing the Iran narrative against all evidence. Oh, yeah. Well, that's because, first of all, they've already got the election results set. If Kamala Harris wins, Russia did it. And if Donald Trump wins, if Kamala Harris wins, Iran did it. And if Trump wins, Russia did it. And they've already started that, right? They've already started that. And they probably want to nudge Trump in that direction, right? You know, I mean, that's the bad part of Trumpism. Trump is super pro-Israel. Trump, has said very negative things about Muslims. So convincing Donald Trump that Iran is trying to kill him is probably a way to nudge Trump to be more anti-Iran. And that they're obviously on CNN not going to say, oh, look, this guy was a UKRAINIAC who was tied into the State Department. They're not going to say that. So this is something they can say, right? Blaming it on Iran. You're allowed to blame Iran for stuff in American media. You're not allowed to blame the deep state. You're not allowed to blame the UKRAINIACs. You're not allowed to, let's make this a word, folks. Let's make this. I am adamant. Let us make it a word. UKRAINIAC. Let's make this a word that people use. UKRAINIACs, because that's what they are. UKRAINIACs. Let's make that a thing. Let's talk about UKRAINIACs. We need to start talking about UKRAINIACs. All right, this man is a UKRAINIAC. Not just a maniac, he is a Ukraine maniac. He's a UKRAINIAC. Let's popularize this phrase, UKRAINIACs. He's a NAFO UKRAINIAC. That's what he is. So, all right, folks. It's been fun. I'm going to put on the closing music. I'll be back. Just like I always am. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.